Hey everybody, welcome back for another art journaling video. Today I'm creating with Halloween in mind, but you could easily adapt this idea for fall or even a nighttime outdoor scene. I'm starting out with a black gessoed page in my large dilutions journal, and I'm putting down 4 colors of Dina Wickley Media paint with a large paintbrush. All of the colors I'm using plus the supplies in this video are listed in the description below. After the colors that created the nighttime sky are dry, I'm going to put in a harvest moon. So I'm looking at where the horizon line would be, and then I'm going to create a very large abstract circle with my paintbrush. This is not supposed to be a perfect circle. I'm wanting to leave the brush stroke so that it keeps that artsy look. My first color I'm using is a warm gray, and then I'm going to switch to a cream and finally white paint. I'm not going to overly blend these colors as I'm wanting there to be a lot of texture and movement within this large artsy moon. And when I'm happy with it, I'm just going to set it aside and let it dry 100%. While the moon is drying, I grabbed my splat brush and a sheet of distressed wood grain cardstock, and I began spraying a bunch of colors of distressed spray stain over the top of it to create a realistic wood grain. All of the colors that I used are listed in the description below. Because this sheet of paper was too big to fit inside my splat box 100%, I simply flipped the paper around and continued working on it until an entire sheet was covered. To speed up this process, I grabbed my Ranger heat tool and began drying the paper, and while it was drying, I also used my distress sprayer to add some strips of water and create more texture within my natural wood grain. When the sheet was 100% dry, to bring back the texture of the wood grain, I'm using distress paint in ground espresso and a brayer to simply roll over the top of this textured paper to highlight the wood grain pattern. I'm using a dark paint color, but you could also do this exact same thing with a lighter color of paint, depending on what style of wood you wish to create. After the paint had dried, I cut the paper into 1 by 6 inch pieces, and I'm now covering it with a generous layer of distress resist spray. When the resist spray is dried, it will give these wood planks a realistic varnished look. While the resist spray is drying, I can begin working on my next layer. I'm using Finnabar liquid acrylics and a paintbrush to create spooky tree silhouettes. These silhouettes of the trees will be in the background, and also some of the branches are going to be leaning over and covering the moon. To keep this video moving along, I'm not going to show you step by step how to create these silhouette trees. But it's very simple to do. All you need to draw is a line and then smaller lines going out from it to create branches and twigs, and you will have a realistic looking tree. You could also look up reference photos online of tree silhouettes to help you create even more realistic trees. Now it's time to begin building the fence. The first pieces I'm gluing down were leftover pieces from when I was cutting my 1 inch by 6 inch planks, and these smaller pieces are going to be the framework for the fence, which you would nail all of the bigger boards to. The piece of paper wasn't wide enough to cover the entire width of my page, so I'm simply gluing 2 pieces together, and I will make sure when I'm gluing down the planks later that I cover up this seam, and no one will ever know that the paper wasn't wide enough to begin with. I'm gluing everything down with Distress Collage Medium, which is a really great glue when you're doing any kind of paper crafting, as it dries really fast and is really strong hold, but also has enough flexibility that when you're turning your pages later on, your elements and your glues aren't going to crack and lift. It does allow your pages to move while still holding it down in place. Now that the framework pieces for the fence are in place, I can begin gluing down my wooden planks. I'm going to place the first one along the edge of the journal page so that I don't have to cut or trim any of these wood planks. It's flush against the edge. And I'm also going to do the same thing along the journal seam. And then I'm going to fill in the space in between those two with the rest of the wooden planks. None of these planks are exactly straight or have the same amount of space in between because I'm wanting to create a very rickety old fence. And when everything is dry, I'm going in with a black Fude ball pen and creating little black circles on each board for nail holes. And I'm going to do this on every single board on the fence. Next, I'm going to begin working on my next element, which is the black cat. I'm spreading out some black gesso on white cardstock with my palette knife until it's 100% smooth, and then I'm going to let this dry. If you had black cardstock, that would also work, but I didn't, so I'm making my own with the black gesso on white cardstock. When the black gesso is dry, I'm going to use a watercolor pencil to sketch out the elements of my cat. All you need to do to draw a cat is one, the body, which is a large teardrop shape, an oval with 2 triangles for a head, and a curlicue shape for a tail. After I've drawn these elements, I'm going to just use my scissors to cut them out of the paper, and then I will be able to glue them down on my page. You also can make small adjustments with your scissors as needed when you're cutting these out if you don't like exactly the shape that you've drawn. I'm once again going to glue everything down with Distress Collage Medium, starting with the body. I'm placing the body along the top of the fence with about 1/3 of it below the edge of the fence, and this is going to make it look like the cat is sitting along the top of the fence. Then I'm going to glue down the tail, tucking the end of the tail underneath the body so it looks like the tail is coming out from the cat and not the tail's in the middle of the body. I want it to look like this is one solid piece. And then lastly, I'm going to place the head down on top of the body. When you're placing down the cat head, you don't want the head to be right at the tip of the raindrop body. You want it to overlap the raindrop body slightly so that it looks like the neck of the cat goes right up into the head, and this creates a much more realistic cat silhouette. To create the grass at the bottom of the page, I'm going to be using 2 colors, green, and then that same green mixed with navy to create a darker shade of green. I'm going to use the dark green first to cover the bottom of the page and also brush up into the fence to create blades of grass. And then I'm going to use the second color of green, doing the exact same thing, creating blades of grass and also covering the entire bottom of the page and making a lawn. Using 2 colors is going to give me a lot of extra depth versus using just one. I'm going to use a white gel pen to make some highlight marks on the little black cat. I'm making some in the ears, the face, the body, and 2 highlight marks on the tail. Adding highlight marks like this is going to help my cat stand out from the background and also give more visual interest to my page. Now it's time to work on the embellishments for the bottom of the page along the fence. I'm using these jack-o'-lantern faces, but if you don't want to make this a Halloween page, you could just use regular pumpkins or leaves or anything that you think would look nice at the bottom of a fence. I am using Dina Weekly Media paints mixed with water to color in all of my images. By mixing water into the paint, they're going to become semi-translucent, like watercolors, but they're going to dry permanent because they are acrylic paints. This is a really fun technique for painting and coloring in any kind of image, especially stamped images like this. I applied the first layer of orange paint and then went back in to highlight with red-orange Sedona, and then painting in all of the stems of the pumpkin with dark brown umber. And then I'm going to let this dry 100% and cut them out with my scissors so I can begin layering them onto my page. I'm placing these pumpkin faces down in no particular order. Some of them will be stacked up just because I think it's cute to have topsy-turvy pumpkins, but you could also just lay them all out on the bottom of your page if you're not into this stacking look. And again, if you're not into Halloween and you don't want to do anything Halloween themed in your art journal, you could easily adapt this idea by using just traditional pumpkins that you've either stamped, stenciled, or drew yourself. You could use fall leaves, or you could even turn this into a summer or spring page and have flowers along the bottom of the fence. This idea can be easily adapted to any season or holiday. So like I said, I'm just going to keep placing down these pumpkin faces in no particular order, stacking them up. Some of them I did make a choice because of the shape. I thought some of them lent themselves more to a look of stacking than others. Like this last one that I'm placing down, it had a flat bottom, so I thought that would look better stacked than some of the ones that are more curved or wonky. But that, of course, is totally a style preference because any of these pumpkins would look cute stacked and placed in no particular order any way you want. So feel free to express yourself and show some of your own personality when it comes to these design elements at the base of the fence. And I'm just gluing in all these once again with Distress Collage Medium. And then when they're all dry, I'm going to grab my white gel pen again and add some highlight marks just like I did with the cat. And it's really important when you're adding in these kind of marks that you do them consistently throughout your page, as this will make your page much more cohesive and bring all the elements together like they belong together because they all have little bits of the same elements and marks. And as I add in these last marks, my page is complete. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this inspired you to create in your own art journal. If so, I would love to see your work, so share with us using hashtag Art Journal Junction. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future mixed media projects and art journaling videos.